NFL Hall of Fame game preview 2023. We got the New York Jets taking on the Cleveland Browns. And no, Aaron Rodgers and Deshaun Watson are not going to be playing in this game, but this is going to be the game that kicks off the start of the 2023 NFL preseason slate. And even though we're not going to see a lot of the starters playing in this game, there are a lot of storylines and key players that you guys need to keep your eyes out for. And that's what we're going to be discussing in this preview. Let's start off with the biggest storylines for the New York Jets heading into the Hall of Fame game. First of all, yes, we know that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the guy at QB this season for New York, but what about Zach Wilson? Is he still the future at quarterback for the New York Jets? Hopefully, with Aaron Rodgers starting a couple of seasons for New York, that would give Zach Wilson more time to develop. Because you got to remember that the Jets did select him really high not too long ago in the draft. So hopefully he improves enough for when Aaron Rodgers retires, he can take back over the reins at QB. So you want to see how Zach Wilson looks and how he performs against the Browns in this game. Yes, it is the preseason. You're not going to be seeing these guys playing at full speed if they are starters, but this is a good measuring stick to see how improved Zach Wilson is right now from where he was a year ago. And the preseason is a good tool to evaluate guys like Zach Wilson. If he struggles in this game and throughout the majority of the preseason, then that probably is a good indicator that he's not taking too many strides in his improvement. He's not really developing. So Zach Wilson, how he plays in this game, definitely going to have my eyes on that. The offensive line concerns for the New York Jets have been well documented this offseason. A lot of people in the national media keep harping on this offensive line. And of course, we're going to see how the offensive line does in this game against the Cleveland Browns, who have some issues on the defensive line in their own rights. There are two offensive linemen in particular that if you're a Jets fan, you need to watch in this game. Rookie center out of Wisconsin, Joe Tippmann. He was considered either the best or second best center coming out of this past year's draft. And the reason why you need to keep your eyes on him is because when you think about some of the best offensive lines in the NFL, they all have great centers. Kansas City, Philadelphia Eagles, they got Jason Kelce. So if you have a good offensive line, the majority of the times, you're going to have a great center. And the New York Jets haven't had one of those since Nick Mangold. So Joe Tippmann, if he can end up being that next good rookie center for the New York Jets, or the next great rookie center for the New York Jets this season, like how Nick Mangold was his rookie season, then this is going to be a really good offensive line. And Joe Tippmann is somebody who many draft analysts expect to have a really long career. Some people think he can be a 10-year starter in this league. And you remember how long Nick Mangold played for the New York Jets at center. So hopefully Joe Tippmann can give you that kind of production, and we're going to get a good understanding of where he is as far as him being a day one starter in this game, because he's in the battle to be the starting center for the Jets with Connor McGovern, who's a veteran in this league. He started a good amount of the games over the last couple of years for the Jets in the past. So we're going to see how good Joe Tippmann's going to look in this matchup. And then the last thing you need to keep your eyes out on for the New York Jets are their backup running back spots. Now, right now, they're flirting with signing Dalvin Cook. And even if they do sign Dalvin Cook, you still need to keep your eyes on this, because you want to know who's going to be that third running back behind Dalvin Cook if he gets signed, and Breece Hall when he gets back fully healthy. And they got a lot of good running backs on the roster. Michael Carter, Zonovan Knight. You also got rookie out of Pittsburgh, Israel Abandokonda. I think I said that right. Abandokonda. Yeah, Israel Abandokonda. And he was one of my favorite running backs coming out of this past year's draft. Very explosive, has very good acceleration for his size. He's a bowling ball when he gets into the open field. So I expect to see a lot of him in this game. And normally the run game isn't really good in the Hall of Fame game because you don't really get good offensive line play. So even if the offensive line doesn't play great as a whole, if you're a New York Jets fan, you need to just pay attention to the individual player on the offensive line and not the overall performance as a whole, because it's normally a crapshoot when you look at offensive line play in the preseason overall. You just got a bunch of moving pieces there, a bunch of guys who got no timing, no chemistry, mix and match lineups. Just pay more attention to the players on the offensive line who you have the most interest in. Joe Tippmann and Mekhi Becton, who we also got to touch on too. But at running back, you got Israel Abanikanda, rookie out of Pittsburgh. I think he probably is going to be the one who runs away with that RB3 spot behind Dalvin and Breece Hall. But Michael Carter is a guy who I'm not really sleeping on as well. Also, we got Travis Dye out of USC. I had a pretty high grade on him. I had a 5th round grade on him. He has very good vision, very shifty. He doesn't have top speed, but he does have pretty good acceleration. And he's a tough running back overall. Anything you want him to do, he's going to contribute on special teams. I think he's a pretty willing blocker as well. So keep your eyes out on Travis Dye, Israel Abanikanda, the rookie running backs that they have, along with Michael Carter and Zonovan Knight. And you need to look out for Mekhi Becton. I would be doing Jets fans a disservice if I didn't talk about him, but I mentioned Joe Tippmann. Mekhi Becton, people label him a bust, but I don't think he's a bust because of him being unable to perform at a high level. When he's healthy, he's pretty good, but that's the problem with him. When he's healthy, which is something that he isn't really able to do. Well, he's not really able to stay healthy, which is something that has hindered him up to this point of his career. And that's why his career kind of is on the line, at least when it comes to him remaining with the New York Jets after this season. So he needs to stay healthy. He did lose some weight. He is in better shape now than what he used to be. But you want to see what he's going to do in this game, because this is somebody who is competing for a starting job, and he's going to get a lot of playing time in this game. So the fact that he's getting a lot of playing time in this game shows you that the coaching staff is expecting a lot out of him this year. And so far, there's a lot that they need to see. So look out for Mekhi Becton on the New York Jets offensive line. Biggest storylines for the Browns heading into this matchup: their second defensive tackle spot next to Dalvin Tomlinson. Who's going to end up taking over at that role? Now, they got a lot of interior defensive linemen who they brought in via free agency. Dalvin Tomlinson, they're paying him a lot of money, but they also have Tristan Hill, Maurice Hurst, who they signed in free agency. They drafted rookie defensive tackle out of Baylor. Let me see if I can pronounce his name correctly. Here we go. Siaki Ika. I think I got it. Siaki Ika. He was drafted in the 3rd round out of Baylor. Doesn't really bring much to the pass rush department, but he's really phenomenal against the run. And that was the Cleveland Browns' biggest weakness on defense last year, was their lack of a run defense. So he could come in and be that good elite run stuffer that they need right out the gate. And I think he was one of the best run stuffers coming out of this past year's draft class from that interior defensive lineman position. So you need to keep your eyes out on that defensive tackle position. Also, who's stepping up at wide receiver behind Amari Cooper? Now, they got a lot of talent in the receiver room. And it's not a question of, do they have talent at wide receiver? It's the question of who's going to be the most consistent players who they can look at to produce consistently on a week-to-week basis. Now, Elijah Moore, who they traded for with the New York Jets not too long ago, he's been making a lot of noise for the Browns so far throughout training camp. He's been Deshaun Watson's pretty much go-to target. So if he plays in this game, Look out for Elijah Moore. You also need to keep your eyes out on Cedric Tillman, who I'm going to touch on in depth a little bit later in this. He was one of my highest rated receivers coming out of Tennessee. I felt he was better than Jalen Hyatt. He has a lot of similarities to Mike Evans. We're going to see a lot of him in this game. And the run defense, is that going to improve? Now, they hired Jim Schwartz as their new defensive coordinator. Now, you got to remember that Jim Schwartz is somebody who is highly respected in the NFL coaching world. He's a really good defensive coordinator. Everywhere he goes, the defenses normally are pretty good. And the run defense needs to improve if the Browns are going to be able to have a shot at winning the AFC North this year. Now, the run defense doesn't need to improve in the preseason. You're just trying to, get your rotations in order, trying to evaluate guys, who's going to make the roster, who's going to be put on the practice squad, who's going to be the starters. But you would like to see some improvement in that department. If the New York Jets come out in this game and they run for over 150 yards on you in the preseason, that's a huge concern. The offensive line play in the preseason is normally really bad. So anytime you give up 200 rushing yards in the preseason, it's a huge disaster, and you need to have some huge talks with your defense because some tough decisions need to be made if you're giving up that many rushing yards in the preseason. You're having so many different offensive line combinations thrown out there that it's pretty hard for chemistry to really be pretty good if you're, a backup or third string, fourth string offensive lineman and you get thrown up in there. So for you to give up 200 rushing yards, that means that the offensive lineman that you're going against just dominated you. The preseason is not where you see a lot of teams rushing for a lot on the ground. You need to have good chemistry and communication on the offensive line to be effective in pass protection and run blocking. And that's why you don't really see a lot of good blocking in the preseason, because you just got a lot of guys who are just kind of thrown out there and the coaches are just rotating them at different positions. So keep your eyes on the Browns' run defense. If they get carved up in this game, I'm going to have a lot of concerns. Players to watch for the New York Jets: Jason Brownlee, undrafted rookie free agent wide receiver out of Cal. Really good size. He's 6'2", has great speed. He's been making a lot of plays throughout training camp for the New York Jets so far. I've seen him on social media a lot. He was given Sauce Gardner the burners. Yeah, I believe it was Sauce Gardner. This dude flew past Sauce Gardner. He was giving Sauce Gardner some work in a couple of clips that I saw floating around on social media. So keep your eyes out on Jason Brownlee. This is somebody who's in the conversation to be the wide receiver 5 on this team, maybe a practice squad guy, a bubble guy to make the roster, but there's always a couple of guys who go undrafted on everybody's favorite team who people kind of gravitate towards and root to make the roster because they hope that their team found the next undrafted gem. And this is probably somebody who the Hard Knocks team is going to be following around a lot. So if you're going to be keeping up with Hard Knocks, you need to be keeping up with Jason Brownlee, undrafted rookie free agent out of Cal. Rookie center Joe Tippmann, we talked about him to start this early, but we're going to be touching on him a little bit more. He has great size, great athleticism to be a center, plays with great balance. And if the New York Jets are going to have a great offensive line this year, if Joe Tippmann ends up starting and beating out Connor McGovern, then that's a good sign if you're a Jets fan. And plus, the last time the Jets had elite center play was when they had Nick Mangold. He's been out the league for a while, and their offensive lines haven't been good since. And we look at Mekhi Becton, but Joe Tippmann is going to be the second most important player on this offensive line if he starts. If the New York Jets are going to have a good offensive line this year, it's going to start with whoever they have starting at center. I believe Joe Tippmann is going to end up beating out Connor McGovern for that starting job at center. And I think with his athleticism and how much of a mauler he is in the run game, he's going to drastically improve that New York Jets run blocking, and he also is going to be able to provide them with better play from that position than Connor McGovern. And he hasn't been bad. It's just that, you could be better there. And plus, he's getting up there in age. So I'm rooting for Joe Tippmann. I really like his game. This was somebody who I was a huge fan of when he was coming out of Wisconsin. Big, powerful, mauler in the run game. If the Jets end up starting him this year and they end up being good on the offensive line, it's probably because of how good Joe Tippmann is going to be if he starts. Tony Adams. This was somebody who went undrafted last year out of Illinois. He was able to make the roster. He appeared in 11 games. He started in one of them. And he's in the running to end up replacing LaMarcus Joyner. And there are a lot of fans who are rooting for Tony Adams because, like Jason Brownlee, undrafted guy who, everybody wants to find the next undrafted gem. So Tony Adams makes the roster. So fans, of course, if you make the roster, people are going to keep their eyes on you. And now he has a prime opportunity to maybe start at safety this year. So keep your eyes for how he plays in this game. He's going to see a lot of action. And I'm looking at there are two young edge rushers in Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. Now, Will McDonald was drafted in the first round, 15th overall from this past year's NFL draft out of Iowa State. I thought he was quietly overlooked a little bit because before the season started, he was projected to be a top 5, top 10 pick. And then throughout the season, he quietly just fell off of people's radars and then went back into the first round. So when he got drafted 15th overall, there were a good amount of people who were a little bit shocked because they thought that he was going to be a name that you was going to hear called late in the first round or even early second. And Jermaine Johnson, he was a late first round pick by the New York Jets last year coming out of Florida State in 2022. And when the New York Jets drafted Jermaine Johnson late in the first round, there was a lot of hype around that move. There was a lot of optimism about Jermaine Johnson and what he can be for the New York Jets in the foreseeable future. But we didn't really get to see too much of him as a rookie. And in my opinion, I thought that he had the potential to be the best pass rusher coming out of last year's draft class. He probably could have been a top 10 pick, depending on, how certain teams were reportedly feeling about him. So when you look at him going into this preseason matchup, I want to see if he's going to have some moments where he comes out and he flashes. He had 2.5 sacks last year, which isn't bad, but I want to see him potentially have a breakout season this year. And he has a lot of athleticism. This dude is one of the most athletically gifted edge rushers that I think has come out in the last couple of years. And he kind of has a lot of similarities in my eyes to Jalen Phillips, but way more athletic. So look out for Jermaine Johnson in this game. And one of the questions about the Cleveland Browns is their depth at offensive tackle. So if you're a Browns fan, your offensive tackle depth is definitely going to get tested in this game between Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald, because both of those guys are two pass rushers who Jets fans are hoping can be their two future studs when it comes to being able to get pressure on the quarterback. Browns players to watch don't have as many as the Browns, but I'm definitely going to be looking at Cedric Tillman. I think he was an underrated route runner. He's really good after the catch. This dude in the open field is really scary. Great size, great athleticism. Reminds me a lot of Mike Evans. And some people may be a little bit scared to give Cedric Tillman that comparison when you think about how good Mike Evans has been throughout his NFL career. But if you look at Cedric Tillman, the body type, how well he is at coming down with 50-50 balls, good red zone target, but also somebody who you can ask to run all the routes in between the short intermediate sides of the field. So Cedric Tillman, this is somebody who can do it all. He's not just a great deep ball wideout who can get those contested 50-50 balls. This is also somebody who is really good in between the numbers, short, intermediate. And when you're looking at Jerome Ford, he's going to be the backup running back for the Browns this year. They got him in the 5th round in last year's draft, which I don't know how the hell he went that low, because I thought that he was arguably one of the best running backs in that draft last year. And Jerome Ford, great vision, incredible size, 5'11", 220 pounds. But even though he has good size, he moves incredibly well. Very good speed, very good acceleration, and he's really agile for his size. And I think that the reason why they were so comfortable allowing Kareem Hunt to just hit free agency was because they had Jerome Ford looming in the background. Because when they drafted him last year, I was like, damn, like, he's going to sit for this year, but they probably were going to let Kareem Hunt walk, and that's what they did. And I think Jerome Ford actually could be better. Now, he probably won't give you what Kareem Hunt gave you in the passing game, but that's what you got Demetric Felton for, to pick up what you're lacking in the passing game department from your running backs. But he's a really good running back with great vision, really good after contact. Like, I'm excited to watch Jerome Ford work in this game. A lot of you guys are kind of sleeping on Jerome Ford unless you're a Browns fan. This dude is exciting to watch. Siaki Ika, third-round pick out of Baylor, rookie. I think he potentially could be starting next to Dalvin Tomlinson. They do have somebody ahead of him, Jordan Elliott, I believe his name is, who started the majority of the games at that other defensive tackle spot. But I think Siaki Ika could end up outperforming him. Really good against the run. He probably doesn't give you much in the passing game when it comes to being able to get after the quarterback, but your run defense was a huge liability this year, and you don't really need him to get pressure on the quarterback. That's what Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith are for, and you can probably get a little bit of that out of Dalvin Tomlinson. I think if you can get somebody who can come in and be a good or maybe elite run stuffer right away, I think that's a win. So Siaki Ika is somebody that, if you're a Browns fan, keep an eye out on for. So these are my Cleveland Browns players to watch for the 2023 NFL Hall of Fame game. Let me know some Browns players that you guys are going to have your eyes out on for. I'm probably also going to be keeping out on DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I was a huge fan of his. Coming out of UCLA, very good arm, could be the Browns' backup quarterback. But this is my NFL Hall of Fame game preview. Let me know some things that you guys are going to be keeping your eyes out for. What are some players that you're going to be watching? We will be going live after the game, giving my thoughts, takeaways, analysis, all that good stuff. So we're going to be going live after the NFL Hall of Fame game. Make sure that you're subscribed. You got post notifications on so you don't miss it.